Diego Laxalt.
Oh,
Melee.
Same again.
I remember Melee signed from AC Milan on loan. You were like, this is the fullback we need. I still remember I was on holiday at the time, listening to, I was away at the time, on holiday, listening to the scouting podcast you did on our Patreon, and I was like, the scouts raving about this guy,
Yep.
Melee's raving about this guy, this is going to be a signing and a half, and he comes in, basically all I did was wear glasses and play Fortnite.
aye.
That was the basic.
Was it Specky Hot Dog we call it? This is the one signing where you think, this is the guy we should get. On paper, this looks like a cracking signing, but unfortunately, like a lot of Celtic signings, heart of a mouse, absolute heart. Well,
Which is surprising for a Neil Lennon signing.
Yeah.
Because if
maybe
Neil
that's a bit
Lennon's,
harsh.
well, no, it's not harsh. But if Neil Lennon signings, if anything, what they lacked in skill and ability, they made up for in absolute graft and heart and all that other stuff that can sometimes drag you through a game. But that guy, as you say, Melly, or as Melly said, Stephen, he was meek. He was crap. Do you know what? He was crap.
Yeah, it was crap.
We're already sailing close to the wind when it comes to sort of country profiling a player based on the country he's from, with the Jozo stuff about how he looks. He really looks like a centre half and all that. But Diego Laxalt as well. He's a Uruguayan defender, man.
Yeah.
Come on, that comes with a certain reputation.
He played in World Cups and Euros.
Yeah,
or
it was 2014.
Not Euros, but
No.
Hey, he didn't play in the Euros because he's. You know what, here, can I tell you something? Let me just tell you something here. Wait a sec. Let me just. Let me tell you. Do you know why he didn't play in the Euros? Because he's from fucking Uruguay. He's from Uruguay. That's why he didn't play in the Euros. What I meant was he played in the South American Euros.
is that suit morphing you into Chris Boyd as you speak?
You be quiet.
South American
He
Euros.
didn't play in the Euros, okay?
He did. He played in some of those things you just listed. It's a 2014 World Cup, I think, or 2018, doesn't really matter.
Get your facts right, mate.
He was nothing. I'm tempted to give him a little bit of leeway with it being that season, right? Because certain things happened that season. A lot of signings didn't work out at all.
He played enough, man.
He did play enough.
He had braids.
The cornrows, which is already troubling as well. Diego Laxalt was is he a flop?
He's a flop.
He's an absolute flop. You know who's not a flop? I don't know what category you're going to put him in, but he's definitely not a flop. It's Frimpong.
Oh, Frimpong. He signed in the same day as Leo Connor. So when you're looking at the two profiles of the players, Frimpong hadn't seen a minute of first team football. He's coming from Man City's sort of development squad. Leonard had seen him play against Celtic's reserves and thought, keep an eye on him. Didn't expect anything of this guy coming in. Lennon said maybe development team, but then after a couple of weeks, Lennon said, I can't hold this guy back. Bought him for absolutely nothing. I'm really torn between blockbuster and good bit of business. Good bit of business because he came in, played really well, and we sold him for a massive fee only 18 months later. But he
Linked
did
with Barcelona in this window. Although, who isn't he?
That's true.
But he was there for such little time, and he did play in that 10 in a row season because he could go on to be a blockbuster player, but I don't know if he was for us. But
I kinda
some
feel
of the
that.
games he played for us, like, he was unplayable at right back for this wee guy. So enthusiastic, one of those guys who you just loved watching playing because you can tell he loves playing football. And the famous Oh My Days interview after winning the League Cup against Rangers and all that. I think I'm going to need to do a really good bit of business for this guy, but I loved him, man.
Top end of good bit of business, isn't he?
He's good bit of business plus, isn't he? Is he one season away from blockbuster here? Is he just that slightly too short a Celtic career to truly be considered? Although having said that, we've already put Jota in, and he was here longer than him.
To be fair, Frimpong played in the curtailed season as well, didn't he? He only got up to March, and then the second season was the disaster season, and he left just after Dubai. I wonder what tipped him over the switch.
I think everything about it is blockbuster, apart from the length of time that he was here. And maybe leaving in mid-season maybe just sort of takes the shine off it a little bit, because, as you've already said, came for nothing, left for massive money, quick turnaround. This is how we're supposed to do it. I know we've got various problems with the releasing of players at the right time at Celtic and the fans accepting that as a role within European football. But that was the perfect That was the perfect turnaround of a player for massive profit.
Who did we replace him with?
John Joe Kenny. That's why I was a wee bit hesitant to say the perfect turnaround.
Yes, but that's not his fault. That's not his fault, right enough. Celtic did a good job of the Frimpong thing, as long as you end the analysis of it on the day he left and don't think about who replaced him. He's 100% good bit of business, bordering on blockbuster, but it's just that, maybe if he'd seen out the season, if Celtic had won 10 in a row, and he was part of it, he's ridiculously, he's right into blockbuster.
And had he stayed, we probably would have had a better chance of winning 10 in a row.
It was a long, long way gone by then, wasn't it? But
the world's first 26-point right back.
How do you think he'd get on with Ange?
Well, that's interesting because it's a totally different.
I don't know if he could play that role. Could you see him come inside, take the ball?
I haven't seen much of him or really anything of him in Germany. I don't know which role as a fullback he's playing, but I do know that here he was completely different. And quite often when we're making the case for the current fullbacks, Taylor, and it's mainly Taylor we're making the case for, because we often say that, look, forget about Frimpong and Tierney, they don't play like that anymore. So it is a complete contrast.
Do you know where Ange would play him? Right wing. He would probably play him in right wing because those low crosses, Frimpong was brilliant at that, and Ange loves a bit of that as well. So I can see if he was still here, I could see Ange going, let's push you up the pitch a wee bit, see how you can do up there. So where are we putting him? Good bit of business. If there was a good bit of business plus, he would be there, but he's a good bit of business.
I think so.
Cameron Carter-Vickers. Now, this is a guy who I love. Yes. I love Carter-Vickers. This league strolls it. He's a Rolls Royce, to coin a Neil Lennon term. Absolutely strolls this league. I think the only reason he's no discussed up there with Virgil van Dijk and all that sort of stuff is because Virgil van Dijk obviously was a better footballer. That is plain to see.
He's ruined it for everybody.
He's ruined it for everybody. But also Carter-Vickers goes about his business a bit quieter than Van Dijk does. Van Dijk had the free kicks. He would maraud up the pitch and all that sort of stuff. But as far as the defensive stuff goes, Carter-Vickers doesn't break sweat. I've not seen a single thing in this league that has caused him to even get out of third gear. He just breezes through it, takes the ball off people, anticipates stuff, wins headers. He's there all day. He's earning his corn.
Plus, he's got that trophy, 20-minute Tim's Player of the Year as well.
Yeah, 20-minute Tim's Player of the Year last season for us, So
the granddaddy of them all when it comes to individual player awards. He's been brilliant, absolutely superb. As you were saying that about Carter-Vickers, I'm quite conscious of the fact that we've maybe been quite unfair on Frimpong of just that curtailing of his Celtic career, because we've seen his whole Celtic career, whereas we're putting him up against guys who have basically just started and they've hopefully get seasons to come, and we're going like, they're just better. They're just better. They were just giving them the wee pinch in the cheek. Jota and Carter-Vickers, they're possibly blockbuster. So I'm aware of that you could wake up tomorrow and they've both left. Jota and Carter-Vickers.
You're aware of it,
but... It seems unlikely. But
yes, here it is.
But I'm choosing to ignore it. Carter-Vickers, he's a blockbuster for me. Well, a tremendous signing. Absolutely superb. And again, with the Frimpong thing as well, we don't know what's going to happen with Carter-Vickers. He could be here for 4 years and leave for nothing, or however long his contract is. So that fee, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know the nature of when he leaves Celtic. So as we sit here just now, we can only go on how it makes us feel, Melly. Do you know what I mean? Carter-Vickers blockbuster, superbs.
I love the guy. I remember deadline day, I thought we'd had a good deadline day bringing in Jota and Giakoumakis, and there was chat. Carter-Vickers permanent deal, loan, might be too late, might not go through. And I was like, do you know what? Starfelt and Welsh have been all right, but now starting the season, I can't imagine Celtic without the guy. He is just brilliant. And look, he might be one of these guys that maybe like Scott Brown is maybe linked away, but Premier League teams don't take a chance on him because they think we can get better guys on the ball out there. But even if he was to do a Jozo and stay with Celtic his full career, good. Because I think he's just going to stroll up here. He's
25
really good
at the end of the year.
Exactly. So he's not young. So I just think this guy is exactly what you want from a deadline day signing. A loan, you think, right, let's see how it goes. And then when he comes in, we'll get this guy signed up as soon as possible. And I just hope he's here for years to come.
The thing about it is, him and Jota kind of show you sometimes all a player needs is a manager to put a bit of faith in them and start playing them, because it's remarkable to me, like, these guys come to Celtic, they do well for a relatively short period of time, like a season is what, 7 months of football, 8 months of football, something like that. They play 8 months of football, having been at a club for years, having been on loan everywhere else, and had been a bit nomadic like Carter-Vickers, and immediately people like, that guy could play in the Premiership. He could play in the Premiership the whole time.
Yeah.
It's just no one's noticed, or he's never found a manager that's inspired him to do it.
He's finally found a home because he had a numerous amount of loan spells, didn't he? He was all over the place down in the Championship, and now he's at Celtic.
So where are you putting him?
Oh, Blockbuster.
Blockbuster?
Yeah,
easy.
absolutely.
Blockbuster for me.
Dead easy.
Next one up, sure we'll all agree, contender for Blockbuster, Badr El Kaddouri. Scored against Rangers, immediately puts him up there.
Alan McGregor, cheers for that one.
No one expected more from Badr El Kaddouri. Yeah. We couldn't reasonably put him in there. He wasn't really a good bit of business. Barely played. Would they play maybe a dozen games or so?
He left in the January, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, he's a flop.
I mean, he was at Dynamo Kiev for like 11 years.
Really?
Before joining Celtic on loan. Played 300 odd games or something for them. Massive amounts of games. Very experienced Moroccan international left back. Who were we trying to replace at that time?
Izagiri broke his ankle, was it?
Right, that's right, because I did wonder why. I just couldn't remember if it was before or after Izagiri or whatever. So Izagiri comes in, Izagiri goes out, Badr El Kaddouri comes in, and I can barely remember him kicking the ball for us. Apart from that trundler against Rangers, that was about it.
A keeper's mistake as well, and we get pumped 4-2 in that game, so absolute flop.
So that's Badr El Kaddouri. Absolute flop. Next up, and one everyone's waiting for an explanation for, Efe Ambrose. So, let me remind you once again, Blockbuster, good bit of business. He's Efe Ambrose. Outright, expected more, outright flop.
He's quite literally all of these.
Yeah.
All of these.
So that's kind of why we made the he's Efe Ambrose, Stephen, because he's a Renaissance man. He's everything. He's a man of many talents.
Everything and nothing all at once.
He is the one man in Celtic's history is beyond. He transcends pigeonholing, the likes of which we are trying to do today.
He cannot be pigeonholed.
No, you will not tie Efe Ambrose down to one of our meaningless little tiers that we've created.
Just put the what my like.
Yeah, exactly. There is no need to be upset. There's
disasters. There are backflips. There are memes. There are. Did he not play international duty and then fly back in a plane and play for Celtic in the Champions League or in the Europa League or whatever it was less than 24 hours later, and he played well. And
he cost 2 goals.
Did he cost 2 goals? He played badly. He has played. It's just he's done everything.
Cost the goal against Red Imps as well.
And he's played for many managers, and he cost buttons, so you could say he's a good bit of business. He's definitely not a blockbuster, but for entertainment value, he was a blockbuster. He's been a flop. We had expected more, so we had to create he's Efe Ambrose category.
The dribbles, the playing in multiple. Remember, he played it right back for a time as well, so he's Efe Ambrose, isn't he?
Hey,
he's Efe Ambrose.
Won the African Cup of Nations.
Yeah.
Won a load of trophies at Celtic. Pish at football, but
where does he end up? He's ended up at Livingston,
Hibs for a bit. Yeah,
where is he now? Derby.
Yeah. He was at St Johnstone. I don't think he's got a club right now, does he?
Dunfermline Athletic, St Johnstone. Wow. He's probably without a club. So Efe Ambrose, he's Efe Ambrose. Next up, I think Greg Taylor epitomises, especially now given his recent uptick in form, a very particular category we've got here. And I think we're all going to agree on it, but I'll come to you first, Melly.
Yeah, this is Diego Laxalt. I know for certain that Celtic tried to sign him the year before, but didn't go through. It was him and Aaron Cresswell. This is why Greg Taylor was signed at the last minute on deadline day, because Celtic were trying to sign these guys and it didn't work out. At the start, you're thinking, he's no Kieran Tierney replacement. He's a completely different player. I didn't really get it. While thinking he'll do a job, but as soon as Ange came in, you're like, right, this is what this guy's made for. Him and Ralston have really settled into these roles and done really well, and you're just that. A real good bit of business now. A real good bit of business.
How much was he? 1.5 million or something?
So less than 2 million between
I thought it was
one.
more. I thought it was upwards, getting towards 3.
Will you discuss the benefits of Greg Taylor, Stephen? I'll Google it.
I think he was getting up close towards 3, but again, that might be one of those with
because we get 25 million for Tierney.
Once he wins the Ballon d'Or and all that, it goes up over 3 million. Greg Taylor is proving in the fullness of time to be a great sign for Celtic. Now, we're in season 4 now, as we record this, so maybe it took him a while to get going. He had the competition with Bolingoli for a little bit, which he resoundingly won. I think we can all agree. Greg Taylor has been a really, really good signing. He's been excellent this season. I think it would be excessive to make him blockbuster.
Yep.
However, I think he is most certainly a good bit of business now. I think absolutely. Even if he is 3 million, what does that get you? We've just spent
all season
ages talking about exactly what that gets you when it comes to upfront. You might think it's quite a lot to pay for a Scottish-based player, but we did it with David Turnbull as well. Very similar fee, and I think he's been a success as well.
See, if he's good, it doesn't really matter.
Exactly. I know it's something we focus on too much, but we're using it as a kind of a guideline for how we feel about these signings. But I mean, who really cares about transfer fees at the end of the day? Greg Taylor was, without a doubt, without much ado, I think goes into good bit of business for me.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic bit of business. I had a wee look there, Steve, while you were chatting. 2 million was offered on deadline day. At the beginning of the day, it was turfed out, and then he ended up signing for an undisclosed fee. So that tells you it's probably obviously going to be more than 2 million. But as you say, Melly, it doesn't matter because he's a good player and worth every penny. Even if it turned out that we'd signed Greg Taylor for 4 or 5 million, at the time you'd be like, I can't believe we paid 5 million for this guy. But now you'd be like, actually money well spent.
Yeah.
Next up, a man I know absolutely nothing about, signed by Martin O'Neill. Any guesses? Michael Gray.
Oh, right, okay, right. Michael Gray.
Did he even play for Celtic? I vaguely remember seeing a Celtic shirt.
Funnily enough, we have discussed them before on a similar video to this where we ranked the loan signings of all time, Michael Gray. And again, he's going to come into much the same category, or a very similar category here. But what I do remember about Michael Gray, having looked him up for the purposes of that, is that he came in, barely played, but when he did play, Celtic always won. I think he was always on the winning side, including in a game against Rangers where he came off the bench for about 18 minutes or something like that. Yes, he gets the credit for that. So he barely played. Michael Gray, he was a player of some reputation down south. From memory, he played for Sunderland for years. Came up to Celtic.
Ended up at Blackburn, didn't he?
Right, okay. This is the very start of the existence of the transfer window. So we're only going back a certain amount of time. It's only the last 20, in fact, exactly 20 years now that the transfer window has been a thing at all. So, and even at that, the transfer window deadline day, which is what this video is about, didn't really become a thing either until Sky started their pish, basically ramping up and Jim White and all that. So it was many years later where everybody started getting excited about transfer deadline day. Back when we signed Michael Gray, it just so happened to be the last day of the month, or maybe even the first day of the next month, depending on which date the day fell on. Michael Gray, absolutely nothing to say about him. He was one of those loan signings we get in that do absolutely. It was kind of similar to El Kaddouri, I suppose. He is did I really expect more? Maybe, because I'd heard of him when he signed for Celtic. Maybe expected a little bit from him.
I wish we had a who category. Who?
He goes straight into Efe Ambrose for me. No, he's a flop, to be honest. Michael Gray.
I have to agree. It was in around that time where Celtic switched from a back three to a back four, and we're looking for a left back, Uli Lawson and him, and it just, you thought, oh look, Martin O'Neill's got a good record for getting these guys from England that maybe aren't really playing and then getting a tune out of them. Not Michael Gray. Was
he even a left back either? He was kind of a winger for most of his career as well, wasn't he?
He's just a strange player, and thought that might work out, but I always like to pride myself on like Martin O'Neill's time. That was my time watching Celtic, and I loved it and watched every game. But I've nothing with this guy. I've no memories. I remember playing him at Easter Road once, so absolute flop for me.
Wayne Rooney battered him.
He did that. I was about to mention that, but I couldn't remember which way around it was, whether he slapped Wayne Rooney or Wayne Rooney slapped him at some player of the year dinner or something. Next up, Zheng Zhi. Now, a controversial one here because signed by Tony Mowbray from Charlton Athletic, where, again, just from memory, he had a fairly solid career at Charlton Athletic, wasn't he? He was like a regular player for them, and we got him on a free transfer and ended up signing a decent deal. In research for this podcast, I saw there was a story in The Guardian, which, looking back, quite unfavourable. A lot of people were accusing Celtic of signing him for marketing reasons.
Short sales, of course.
And I'm like, is that quite offensive? Because it's not like Celtic went to China and signed this player who'd not really played it in it. This was an established British football. He was Chinese, but he'd been established in British football, UK football, and we brought him to Scotland, and immediately I was like, you just signed this guy to sell shirts? I mean, if you posed that question to the guy himself, he would probably say, hold on a minute, What are you trying to suggest here? I'm a professional footballer. I played for Charlton for nearly 3 or 4 years, and then you say they're bringing me up here as some sort of fucking mascot.
Loads and loads of caps for China from memory as well. He's a very, very firmly established footballer. Again, it's always just that part of the world. It's the Far East Asia that people level these weird accusations of shut sales and all that kind of stuff. Because I remember even when Celtic were linked with the current influx of Japanese players, that's the kind of thing that comes up. Oh, it's just about the shut sales. Or we're not going for established players who know the league and all that. We're going for these guys to sell a few shirts. It's totally nonsense.
Selling a few shirts.
Well, that would be that. But there's a difference between signing a guy like Koki Mizuno, right, who had no standing in football whatsoever. He was just a guy we brought in, tried to build up to something of the standard of this Scottish league, and it didn't work out for him, let him go. And signing a guy like Zheng Zhi, who was, as you've already said, firmly established as a British-based, albeit foreign footballer. So I don't think that was ever a thing, signing these guys for the shirt sales and all that. And in recent years, many articles have been published on this subject that kind of paints that as a bit of a lot of pish anyway.
Yeah.
That it doesn't really happen. You don't really.
It's a favourite subject.
It is, yeah. It's mainly for these reasons. I don't like it being thrown at footballers that all their worth is basically punting some tat in Osaka or something. It's just total rubbish. So yeah.
However, just whilst you're on the subject, that is the only reason we signed Douay. That is if any club is going to try and Del Boy it with a signing, it's if Celtic I do believe Celtic thought themselves they could tap into the lucrative market with the likes of Douay, for example. But as I said, there's just treating every Asian player that came to Celtic as some sort of marketing gimmick is really, really fucking offensive.
Very disrespectful to the player. Even taking away the slightly dodgy, racial profiling of it, it's very disrespectful to the players themselves, who, as you've already said, are professional footballers at the end of the day. Zheng Zhi, before we move on, I remember a glorious goal against Hearts. Kind of hooked it over his shoulder right in the top corner. He started the game against Rangers, maybe.
I think he might have.
This was Lennon had taken over from Mowbray, and did they win the 8 league games left in the season? But we still were miles behind in the league, and then he lost the Ross County game. But I think he only had a 2-year deal, maybe a one with another year on it, and he just sort of. You thought, maybe Lennon will get something out of him here, but
we offered him a new contract. He didn't want to stay. He didn't sign it. I think he wanted to come play for Tony Mowbray. Tony Mowbray had tried to sign him for West Brom and couldn't get the deal done. Then brought him to Celtic.
Scared of Neil Lennon, is that what you're saying?
Or Neil Lennon. Well, Neil Lennon obviously liked the guy and
had him up against the wall by the throat and all that.
You sign this. We've got shirts to sell here. We have bought 2 billion Celtic shirts, and it's your fault we can't sell them.
2 billion.
So you're staying here till they're fucking gone. And he says, nah, no deal. Or you're hitting for them.
No dice. I'm going to go and play for Fulham or wherever it is. The categories, again, it doesn't really allow for much when it comes to a guy like Zheng Zhi, because he's a very specific and also a very kind of nondescript case, isn't it? He's not really a flop. Also, I didn't really expect any more from him.
I did.
I think I did.
I did because one, again, Football Manager, his stats were really good in Football Manager. He was a good player in Football Manager, which colours a lot of my football opinion from this time. And again, it was about that time when YouTube videos were starting to emerge of footballers, and he was like a hardy midfielder. He could play anywhere 10 central midfield. He could play in the 8. He could play right and left wing. And I thought, this guy could be a player. Technically gifted footballer, do you know what I mean? And he never really did much, but again, it was an awkward time for Celtic, so I'd say expected more.
I'll buy it. You've charmed me. I can get on board with that. Yep.
Yeah, expected more for me. Not too much more, but just expected better than he done. Like you can go, I mean, that good goal he scored once. But that's in a full season.
We created these categories with some players in mind. We obviously created Efe Ambrose with Efe Ambrose in mind, and I think we might have created another category with this player in mind, Odsonne Edouard.
Oh yes.
Melly, you made a weird noise. You go first.
Oh, blockbuster all day long, isn't it? It's just a shame the old 10 in a row season has sort of coloured him and couldn't be bothered, lazy and all that. But what a player to watch. Absolutely tremendous. We can have that age-old argument, him or Dembele, best since Larson, but you can make a case for both of them. just a brilliant footballer. This is the kind of guy we should be going for. Loan, had the option to buy him, took it up, and it was money well spent. Made our money back on him, but more importantly, we got to see some tremendous performances from him. A guy that, no matter like Rodgers last season, even when Celtic weren't playing well and were scraping through a lot of games, I always felt Celtic can win this game because we've got Odsonne Edouard in the team. So many big goals. The cup final against Hearts, the one against Hearts where Lennon's first game that night, he came back to Celtic on that day. We sat and watched it in yours, Stephen, and that last minute goal with a cross for Scott Brown and the scenes. But as well, Hunskelper, he bagged them against them time and time again, and that big breakthrough in the 3-2 game at Ibrox when the three of us were there. What a day, and what a player.
Yeah, brilliant. I can't really develop much further on that as well. Great signing. I'm not particularly interested in boiling it down to how he left and all that. I think.
How's he getting on at Crystal Palace at the moment?
Not great.
I kind of got the impression with Odsonne Edouard, he was the sort of player that had he stayed at Celtic, you know, people say, if you stay at Celtic, you make yourself a hero and all that. But in reality, that is a lot of the time these players are much better and they could go do much better elsewhere. But I kind of always got the impression with Odsonne Edouard was that fitted him. And then seeing how casually, I don't have a close eye on how he's getting on at Crystal Palace, just what I pick up in ether and read. And you're kind of like, in another not so distant galaxy, had he moved from Paris Saint-Germain to Crystal Palace, I could see Celtic now trying to buy him, a bit like a Yeti.
Yeah.
The move didn't quite work out. We could go out and pay a bit of money and bring this guy in and he would be good for us, which tells me, had you stayed at Celtic, you would have been an absolute superstar here.
Well, I'd even argue he was at Celtic too long eventually, because he wanted to go and test himself in England. I've never had any problem with that. I don't have any issue with that. Yep, exactly. We want players who come and see themselves on that path, the path to greater riches in the higher level, all that stuff. So I've got no issue with that whatsoever. He didn't leave in the greatest of circumstances, but again, it was a symptom of what was going on at the club at the time. We kept these players for far too long, when what we really should have done is taken the emotion out of the 10 in a row and made the sensible decisions at the time.
The decision Neil Lennon wanted, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, it's all water under the bridge now. But we should have done better by some of these guys. Edouard was a great player for Celtic. Hunskelper, you've already mentioned. Goals in Europe as well. I remember him scoring against Copenhagen, against AC Milan, several goals in Europe. I think he was a fantastic signing, and he's without a doubt blockbuster. I think the Crystal Palace thing, he's not done particularly well for them. He exploded onto the scene. He's only scored a couple on his debut. It's not a lot since. But what I would say about that, I don't think it reflects badly on him as a player. I think it's just hard down there, because when you go down there as a striker, it's not like the Van Dijk and Wanyama things and Tierney, who are very specific talents. You're going into a sea of strikers down there where you're dealing with now like Haaland, previously Sergio Aguero, Harry Kane, and all these guys are absolutely world class. And for Edouard to go down and in any way try to replicate that,
who's keeping him out of the team? Is it Zaha?
There's Zaha. They've got a number of young English and French players who kind of rotate around a few different positions. So they've got a lot of very similar players to Edouard, which is quite a tough spot to be in.
I think when you look at his career post Celtic, you can sort of say like, it has kind of been a disappointment, but maybe Palace fans would say that as well, because going down there for a fee like that, you'd expect that Palace don't have that out-and-out striker, and he was going to be that, and it's just not quite happened for him playing under Patrick Vieira as well, one of his countrymen. But I think there's a lot in what you say, Jamie. I think Odsonne Edouard was kind of too good for Scotland, but maybe not good enough for the level. But I think maybe Edouard was a better player for Celtic, but Dembele's maybe a better player, maybe better suited to play in other leagues and all that. But just for Celtic, I mean,
£9 million he cost us, and he was worth every penny.
Aye.
No brainer, as Brendan Rodgers called it, to which I think Celtic disagreed at one point, going, well, hold on, £9 million is never a no-brainer. Do you know what I mean?
It is when you've seen what he can do.
But at the time when Celtic need to write the cheque for the guy, when they're agreeing this £9 million deal, the guys are like, well, hold on a minute, this represents a massive chunk out of our transfer budget. But he proved to be worth it.
But we'd already had him on loan as well, so you can go, look, you've seen what he can do here. So it was just great to watch. And even like, it was the right time for him to go, because we had that wee sort of crossover bit with, maybe Ange and all that, and you're like, nah, just let the guy go. These guys are all done. But again, a great player for Celtic, but hasn't really been missed because of the players we've brought in as well. Like Kyogo was an instant hero.
Is that something all of our blockbuster signings so far have in common? All young-ish, Cameron Carter-Vickers isn't particularly young, but younger, yet to be established players at other clubs who isn't working out for them particularly, and who we all got on loan first.
And crucially, we all spent a lot of money on.
Yeah.
So I think, see if you put the transfer fees in a graph next to the transfer fees, and you might find, just off the top of my head, you might find we got exactly what we paid for almost every single time here.
Line goes up, and so does the quality of the team.
Yeah,
yes,
we almost got exactly what. Now, we created some categories here. You might find myself repeating myself here. We created some categories with players in mind. So we created Efe Ambrose for Efe Ambrose. We created Blockbuster because we had Odsonne Edouard in mind. And we created Flop because we had Doué in mind. The guy was an unmitigated disaster. One of, if not the worst player I've ever seen take to a pitch on a Celtic strip, Stephen.
Yeah.
Probably just so utterly incompetent.
I mean, not
45. It's impressive to get all that in 45 minutes as well.
He didn't play at Celtic Park, but he's arguably even one of the worst players to ever play at Broadwood. Never mind to play at Celtic Park. So.
Did I say play at Celtic Park or play at Celtic strip?
You said that, but I added that little twist on there. He's one of the worst players that Clyde fans have ever seen. Never mind anything else.
Jesus, man.
Dreadful. I mean, it speaks volumes that he was brought in with, as you maybe alluded to, the shirt sales thing in mind. But he was the China captain, brought in to ostensibly to develop him into being a Celtic player, right? And for him to get 45 minutes of that, and for Celtic to see no further point in pursuing this project whatsoever, after 45 minutes, tells you the level he was at. Because he'd been at the club a long time before
that was January, the Clyde game?
That was January, and he'd been brought in, quite obviously on deadline day in the previous window. There's no debate to be had. He is an utter flop.
Can I just tell you something? At the time, though, I've got a contemporaneous report here, right? So he signed on loan initially, which I didn't realise. It says here, Doué has been ordered to return to China by his club Shanghai Shenhua.
By Gordon Strachan.
Yes. Hold on. Right. After they refused the Scottish Premier League leader Celtic's request for an extension of his loan spell.
Wow.
The 23-year-old defender signed a deal in September which allowed both parties to end the loan move if it wasn't working out in the new year. Doué's only first team start came for an embarrassing Clyde. We've spoken about that. The Glasgow Giants insisted they were still keen to keep the player at Parkhead, but moves to extend the deal floundered over money, and now Doué is heading home. Quote that Celtic said, clearly we're disappointed an agreement could not be reached to keep Doué at Celtic. Everyone at the club sincerely wishes him all the best and the very best for the future.
Wow. Well, I'm completely wrong then. I have just said there that I almost gave Celtic credit for cutting it short after 45 minutes and just cutting ties with the guy and moving on. But no, they want to keep him.
There must have been some setup, because there is also reporting at the time, now I can't remember, but there's reporting at the time that we signed him on a 4-year deal. So I don't know if we got him on loan. There was some loan to buy anyway. He ended up back, but the guy was terrible.
Oh, terrible. And
it was so bad, sorry to cut across, but so bad, Melly, that I refuse to believe anyone watched them.
Yeah.
Well,
or maybe it was just a situation a bit like we've had with the COVID season. The culture change was just far too much. And the guy, it's difficult to adjust to come into this country and do the football side of things as well.
Yeah, and this is a long time ago now. It's not as if Chinese football is as it is now, where they have sort of blockbuster players over there. But it was very early on in that, and it's just when you watch them play it, even before the 45 minutes before half time, you're like, you need to take this guy off.
Yeah.
It was that disastrous and cost Celtic the game. The thing I'd like to do is separately ask Gordon Strachan about it and hopefully get the truth out of him. Were you told to sign this guy? He didn't get a sniff until January against a team in the division below. But I'd also like to ask Roy Keane what he thought. Roy Keane came in to Celtic in December. This was his debut, and he's got that guy behind him. Remember after that he said about John Hartson going on the bus after Clyde. Hartson shoveling crisps and coke down his gullet. I mean, what was Roy Keane? No wonder it had at the end of the season, but Doué, absolute flop. The flop of all flops.
Yeah, so I found out we loaned him for 4 months, just while you two were talking there. We loaned him for 4 months for £120,000, and that was to allow us to see if he could adjust to Scottish football. And then after the 4 month period, we could then buy him for £800,000 and get him on a 4-year deal. we wanted to sign the guy for 4 further years, and it was his club that fell down. And interestingly, there's a wee snippet in that reporting about Bobo Baldi, how he decided to stay at Celtic on 28 grand a week. Next up for Celtic, as I lift my little iPad here, Filip Benkovic.
Oh,
that's quite an interesting one then. I'd actually forgotten about Benkovic in more ways than one. I forgot about him for potentially being in this category and forgot about him ever having played for Celtic, to be honest. Benkovic was... he was all right, wasn't he? Maybe a little bit overblown in terms of his value at the time, because he's another one of those let's get him back deals with Benkovic.
We spoke about this recently, didn't we?
We did. Yeah. I can't remember. I think we were talking about kind of various overrated players. Yeah,
because the story of Benkovic was we wanted him. Yeah. Leicester swooped in and paid 13 million for him, blew us out the water, didn't really play, came on loan to us, and he sort of left Stephen, as you say, with a decent reputation. But thinking back, he was that great.
I thought he was totally fine. I thought he was okay. I think he's maybe just... He's one of those guys who, maybe like Sviatchenko as well, just comes in, and Celtic haven't had great luck with centre-halves over the years, like obvious exceptions aside, Dijk and all that. Benkovic came in, and he's one of those guys who, might, like Jozo, he fits the profile, doesn't he? He fits a young guy, tall, physically imposing, seems quite fast, seems fairly capable on the ball. All of those parts amounted to less than the sum of them. I think he was just all right, and I think his subsequent career after leaving Celtic
always tells a story, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does a little bit. Again, I've already said with Edouard, it's very difficult to go down south and replicate the form that you showed in Scotland. You know, the difference in quality is just vast. So I don't think it's necessarily a complete indictment on his career that he hasn't made it at Leicester. But I do remember having been aware of several loans that he's had, and I think he was at Bristol City at one point. Didn't really impress there either, as far as I can gather. So I think he was all right. I think he's a firm expected more for me with Benkovic. Don't think he was a flop. I think that would be very harsh, because I think he came in and played okay up until the point that Neil Lennon came back, and he just didn't really fancy him.
Another one that lacked heart that Neil Lennon didn't like.
Yeah, definitely expected more for me. It's just another one like that third Brendan Rodgers season, his last one. A lot of the games were quite forgettable. That Celtic team was on its last legs, wasn't it? There was a lot of players, and we hadn't really strengthened in the summer, which meant we were relying on players that didn't play before now playing, and he was another one you thought, right, that's a new centre half, but he ended up didn't really play as much, and the guys who were previously there were playing, and I can't really remember a standout game or a standout incident for him. I think he got a couple of goals, but it wasn't as if they were winning goals or anything. Expected much more from the guy, and the loan at Cardiff as well, and I think Lovren, and they've got a tie-in with Leicester, so it's not as if he team's chasing them. I think he's in Udinese right now, but I've not seen or heard from him in a long time.
Next up, sorry, he was expected more.
Yeah.
Next up, and the final player we're going to discuss, ending on a high, Lubos Kamina. Honestly, I couldn't even tell you what the guy looked like. I remember him arriving on deadline day, signed him a goalkeeper, never played. Just a complete waste of time, man.
Oh, exactly. You've got nothing. Like, I can't picture him. I don't know what squad number. I can't even picture what strip he was with. I don't even know if they unveiled him. I've got nothing.
I remember seeing a picture of him outside Celtic Park.
Walking into
Celtic Park. That was about it. A pap shot.
I think what we've done here is we started off with, I think, Jota quite early on. Well, I can't remember who the first one was, and we've ended on Lubos Kamina. It's like one of those like albums you put on where the first 4 tracks are absolutely brilliant. And then after that, you're kind of like, there's a few skippers in there.
That's kind of the problem with YouTube videos, I've noticed as I've been looking at analytics. Everyone watches at the beginning, right? And doesn't matter how good your video is. After about 40, it just tails off. You see the analytics tail off. So if you've hung out to watch the very end of this, and it's ended on Lubos Kamina, we are so sorry. We are so sorry.
I can't believe you fell off after 5 minutes and missed out on us getting to discuss.
This video was about 90 minutes long, and I wonder if they're going to discuss at the end. I'm going to stick to the end for this, and it's Lubos Kamina.
This is Sopranos, in it. We've basically cut to black right at the very end of it. Lubos Kamina, nothing to say. Total flop. I mean, is he even a flop? Is he
could have his own category.
Let's start a new category right at the end. Lubos Kamina right at the end.
Melly, I don't need to even come to you.
No, you could have done your Who. Just another one. But just before we finish, looking at this, and there's a lot of chat about deadline day signings and all that, and this list, taking away last season, because I think that was a kind of fluke because we were in such a flux at the time, but deadline day signings aren't really great, are they?
No, they're not. They give you a wee bit of excitement on deadline day, don't they? But that's about it. And look, let me just I want to sign off in the most professional way here. So just before we wrap up this deadline day broadcast, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting us on Patreon. Now, we did record this prior to Celtic's deadline day. So if anyone comes in on deadline day 22-23 and you're wondering why we didn't discuss them, it's because it's pre-recorded, but we caught absolutely everybody. That is us ranked them. We've done a terrific job there, lads. Thank you and goodbye.